Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of what is this show called again? We haven't been on it so long. Potus Weekly. That's right. That's it. It's Potus Weekly here again. That was a joke. I'm sorry. And we're here today. We're joined by John Joe. It is July 16th, 2020. This is episode 10 of Potus Weekly, and we have actually changed the schedule so that now we will be live on Thursdays instead of what the hell is today anyway? Saturday. Saturday was the day we used to be on. That's what it was. Sorry. I wrote it down somewhere, but I can't get the file to open, so I'm doing this from memory. And I'm bad at memorizing stuff. So, all right. What else? Oh, this is a live call-in show. So if you are interested in calling in, there is or should be a number on the screen or a website on the screen, bit.ly/potuscall. I'm actually not seeing it, which is weird. Let me see if I can fix it. We are just all off today. Sorry about that. That's entirely my fault for being a little bit off. But yeah, we want to thank everybody for coming here today, and John for coming again. We don't have much to talk about other than we're going to be doing some creation evolution controversy discussion, because I see this come up over and over and over again, and I see atheists kind of getting it wrong, and I don't want to say they're atheisting wrong or something like that, but I see them kind of like you always say, you're doing it wrong, but I do want to say that I think that
properly.
You're not atheisting properly. But I do want to say that I think that a lot of the Christians that we've spoken to, especially the ones in the Potus group, tend to get this wrong a lot. And I don't really understand why they cannot wrap their head around this. But so creation, evolution, there's like two major things, creation, evolution. But those are by no means the only two possible explanations, I would say. But I'm not even going to distill into that just yet. What I want to say is that what I hear a lot from the creationists is that, there's, oh, well, if you don't believe creation, what do you believe? And, well, you must believe in something like evolution. And that to me is just a complete fallacy, because my atheism is not dependent on evolution being true. I don't know about yours, but
Exactly. It brings us back to the thing I brought up last week. It's not that we believe in evolution; we trust in the scientific process, which led to the conclusion of evolution and the theory. It's not that we blindly believe it, but we trust it because we've also studied and, I'd rather take the word of somebody in a lab coat than someone who's reading off one book. That's basically.
And even that I have to caution against a little bit, but I do agree with you that I would trust someone who is a legitimate scientist working in the field. I want to be careful with just putting them in lab coats, because creationists do that now. But I do want to say that you're absolutely right.
Trust the process. It's it involves cross-examination by other opposing scientists, other people in lab coats who test, replicate,
exactly,
and they use the process and they come up with the results.
And so here's the thing about creation. I will often hear from a creationist, which I said a minute ago, but I want to kind of delve into it a bit more, which is this, well, if you don't believe in creation, you must believe in something like evolution. And that's irrelevant. Whether or not I believe in evolution is irrelevant. The options are not creation or evolution. The options are creation or not creation. And if you haven't demonstrated that creation is the correct answer, I'm justified in rejecting creation as the correct answer until you demonstrate it. So I don't have to accept something else aside from creation just because you haven't shown. It's like this bizarre sort of, I don't know why they think this way, but it's like either you accept that it's blue or you accept that it's red. And if you don't think that it's blue, clearly you must think that it's red. It's like, no, well, aren't there like a whole host of other colors it could be? Like, and then even then, I could accept neither. Even if blue and red were the only options, if the only options were creation, evolution, I could still not accept either one. I could say there's not enough evidence for creation, there's not enough evidence for evolution. I don't believe either claim. So it's not this you believe one or the other. That's just ridiculous. And I get so sick of seeing the creationists on, especially on podcasts, engaging in this sort of thinking. It really is very frustrating. Sorry to all my Christian friends on there, but I think you get this logic stuff dead wrong, even though I'm constantly accused of not understanding logic, which is just really funny. But as someone who's studied it ad nauseum for like almost a decade, I have a hard time believing that I could be the one that simply doesn't understand logic well enough. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
Well, the thing is, it's about the culture, really. It's about what we were taught since we were kids, and it becomes engraved in our minds that is the ultimate and only truth. So it takes also a lot of courage to kind of break away from that form of thought. You know, because it is indoctrination. At the end of the day, it's indoctrination.
Yeah, I agree. And it's and to spare everybody too much rambling, it is just a bit of hyperbole, I think, for some of these people to actually accept that evolution is just completely wrong. I just don't understand that. I don't understand that because there's just a mountain of evidence.
It's always like,
thing,
I'd rather
so common.
be religious than believe that I came from monkeys. Because go to a zoo, there's still monkeys in zoos. They're not turning into humans. That's the common retort that they do present.
Yes.
Argument.
And that's one of many arguments that I've heard. But at the same time, it's almost like they want to break down the entirety of this body of science. And it almost feels like they're not being serious. Like I almost have a hard time believing that they're actually serious. And I don't... But they are. Some of them really don't accept evolution. But they accept this other crap, and I don't get it. Maybe you can help me. Maybe you can help me understand it, because I'm really struggling to grok what goes through someone's mind when they're so into this creation myth that they're going to just dismiss all evidence of evolution, of which there's a substantial body, including speciation in a laboratory setting. I just don't get it.
Well,
maybe I'm crazy.
Before we get to the details of micro and macro evolution, I really think it really falls under the whole indoctrination, because that's why it's part of our culture, and older people are always wiser, they're always smarter, and they know more than you. They know more than what your school is teaching you. In fact, you can learn about evolution in school, but when you get home, it's the parents themselves who say that, oh, this is just,
you're saying what they think,
but it's not exactly truth. So they contradict what kids are learning as well. And then when they spend time with family on Sundays, and then the story of creation is presented to children once again, it's like, I wouldn't call it brainwashing, but it's just really conditioning the minds.
Yeah, I agree. So what do you think about this? All right. I want to. I'm so frustrated because I saw it a lot this last 2 weeks that we haven't been on. I've actually seen it a lot more than I normally do, which maybe it's like the butterflies thing, where I'm kind of seeing butterflies more often because I saw one once on TV or something. Have you heard of that phenomenon? I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
It's like this idea that you see something and then you're thinking about it, so you see it more often, even though it's been there the same amount of time. Anyway, or the same frequency. So I've been seeing a lot of this creationism is, God basically starting human life, or starting life on Earth with possibly Adam and Eve. Some of them actually accept going back to the origin of life, the early origins of life. But some of them actually think, oh, Adam and Eve were real people, which that's just bizarrely stupid on a level I can't even begin to address. But because there was never one man and one woman. That's just a fact. We know this. There was never one man and one woman from which everyone came from a single garden in the middle of, I don't know where that would have been, I guess Mesopotamia or something. But I mean, like, oh God,
they'll have the kids, they'll have the two sons. So the question
and
is,
I'm not just trying to make fun of these people.
Having sex with? And then the workaround that is that, there was another village. There were other people.
Yeah.
Then they kind of contradict themselves, because if that's not the case, then it would be incest.
Well, yeah, exactly. And but that's one thing, is that there's this first man and first woman. But some creationists accept that God used evolution, and it goes all the way back to 4.6 billion years or whatever to, or 3 some odd billion years to when life started on Earth, and God just sort of, tinkered and made life happen with his, magic tendrils. All hail the flying spaghetti monster. So what I find really funny is that the response that they will give to, so you believe life just came from, natural causes? You think it just poofed into existence? And, well, first of all, that's a gross oversimplification of the process of abiogenesis, which is explained to some degree. But also, isn't that what the fucking God did? Didn't he poof people into existence wholly, fully formed? Like, I mean, come on. Like, it's almost like a tu quoque fallacy, although not quite, because it's basically saying, well, I know we believe this batshit crazy idea of, stuff poofing into existence, but clearly you also believe stuff poofed into existence. And it's like, no, we don't actually think that. We think that organic chemicals, form together and spontaneously, not poof, but spontaneously, which is not the same thing as magic, eventually formed life on this particular planet. So that's one argument that I hear. Can you think of another one? Because I have another couple in my head that I hear all the time against evolution. But I want to give you a chance to chime in.
I think I mentioned this a few episodes ago of how there's folklore. There's Philippine folklore on the creation story as well. That there were 3 types of Filipino: the Indonese, the Malay, and then the Negrito. When we were talking about racism, and
I remember you bringing that up.
The Negritos were shorter and darker, were overcooked by God when He created them. So there are crazy versions of how everything started, and
that's so bizarre.
I guess those beliefs have been slowly eradicated from our culture. That's why we're sticking to the Catholic, the Abrahamic creation. So I don't think they teach that to kids anymore. I wouldn't know. I'm too old to know. But if we have a listener, please let me know if they still tell that story. And also the story of the bamboo that splits into 2. And then one is male and one is female. I'm too old to remember the exact story. But there are stories of how the world came to be.
I think you have the same problem that I have, which is I don't follow education anymore in the U.S. like I used to when I was younger and cared about it because I was being educated. But now it's like I don't have a clue what the fuck they're teaching. The only time I hear about it is when it hits the news. It's like, oh, well, they're trying to bring in this book on creation to Texas or whatever, that kind of thing. But so I would be curious, any callers, if you want to come in, or if you're in the chat room and you have some experience with this in the Philippines, some experience with, what was that? The story of creation taught in schools? Let us know. Is that still a thing that happens in public schools here in the Philippines, or is that done away with? That's a really good question.
Yeah, because I can imagine I'm telling the story of God creating people, the Filipinos, with clay. And, if people aren't being taught that now, I might sound like a crazy person to people. So I'm going to have to look for that. And
no, I mean, to be fair,
that's
it was
exactly
taught
how
at one point, right?
feel about creationists, especially if you did not grow up in a Abrahamic style religion culture. It's going to sound crazy to you.
That's a fair point. And I would say that I don't think it sounds crazy to me, because even though it's possible that it isn't happening, I think we also have to take into account that it did at some point, right? Like, we know that this was taught in schools at some point because you experienced it. Am I not mistaken there? Okay. So I
And it
don't
was
think anybody
hard
would
not
think you're
giggling.
crazy on that basis.
Like hearing it and imagining, okay, but they would throw it into studying folklore. They wouldn't call it a scientific fact, obviously. That's why religious books aren't really in the science sections. They're in their own
I'm
section.
actually,
They're in their own world.
yeah, I'm actually okay with teaching like comparative religions courses and stuff like that. I think that we should be doing more of that. But I will say that I think that if they're showing favoritism to one religious text over another or something like that, then I don't think that that's fair, which is probably what's happening. Like, for example, I would be really surprised if they're going through Muslim lore or whatever, like lore. Like I call it lore, like it's a video game sequence or some kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody because I know when I use that word, it makes it sound like I'm calling it mythology. I happen to think it is mythology, and if you're offended by that, feel free to call in and let us know. So. So another argument that I hear with this creation evolution myth or like creation evolution controversy, sorry, I had myth in the brain, is this idea that there just wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough time for evolution to occur. And this is where we kind of get into the micro evolution bullshit. And one of the things that I hear is like, oh, well, it doesn't matter how much time you get because it's random chance. It's completely random. It's chaos. There's just no way to, it can't possibly work. You can't get a dog from a single cell even over billions of years. And I'm like, do you know how long billions of years is? I think this is just a failure of your imagination and your ability to comprehend large numbers because we only live on this planet for 60 to 80 years if we're lucky. Some of us get to a little bit more, and good for them. I think the oldest man on Earth is now 112 or something like that. So I look at Guinness World Records every so often, and I think he's from like Thailand or something like that. Anyway, so we get a limited amount of time, 60 to 80 years on average per person. That's not a very long time. John over here smoking, probably bringing it down to 60. So, sorry.
My time is coming.
Yeah. So the point is, when you have that sort of small time scale, it's really hard for us to grok what it's like to exist for thousands of years. Or hundreds of years even. And when you start talking about millions of years and billions of years, now you've really jumped out of the scope of something that humans can latch onto. So I kind of understand why that's a compelling response to evolution for some people. This one I actually am not as offended by on the level of stupidity. To me, I actually think there's, even though it's not true or accurate, I think there is at least an argument there that it makes sense from a human perspective because we just can't comprehend that level of time. It's just too long for us to understand. What do you think? I mean, am I onto something here, or like?
Well, your the average mind will probably not be able to comprehend, especially it might sound elitist, but if you're able to make millions and billions, you'll be able to comprehend the value and the quantity versus like, for example, like if you buy a car, how many sticks of cigarettes do you have to save to be able to buy a car? So that's still something you can comprehend because it's still in the hundreds of thousands, but when you start multiplying that by insurmountable amounts that people have never had the opportunity to handle themselves or deal with themselves, then it becomes a bit of a dream. It becomes a little bit of a fantasy.
It becomes almost impossible, to understand.
In fact, a million's also it's a common thing. In fact, a million is a common thing. A billion is not. That's why when that word is thrown around, especially billion, it confuses people because they just think it's an X amount of a million. They don't understand how big the number is. Not unless we tell them that, all right, you don't believe me with 1 million cigarette sticks, so I'm going to send you 1 million sticks and put it in your house. Then you'll realize how big it is. They have to have something tangent, something they can relate to. That's
I
the
love that you
problem
brought
there.
this
If
up
you're
too,
not able
because
to relate or make it tangible, then it's just going to be a word. It doesn't have value.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a website. I'm going to try to find it, and I will see if I can get a link to it on the screen at some point. But there's a website that goes over, and this may actually help people who have trouble understanding large numbers like this. It's a website that goes through the wealthiest people in the world, or I think at least in the U.S., and it shows you, like, on a ruler, like, it starts off with, this is how much money you make in a year, like as a little square or a pixel or whatever, and then it starts to say, this is how much money you make in a lifetime or whatever, and then it goes through and shows you, this is how much money Jeff Bezos has, like on a huge grand scale, and it, as it's going through, it tells you different things that you can compare it to, like you can feed the homeless for 26 years or whatever, like, or some crazy shit like that. Like, there's, with only like 1% of his wealth, you could give all the homeless people homes in the U.S., that kind of thing. I'm going to try to find that website, because I think that's a really great way to kind of help me out here. What word am I looking for? To create an analog. It's a great way to connect.
To make it tangible. Just so that there's a visual representation of how big it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great way to connect the dots between our inability to understand small things and then the ability to understand very large things. And when it comes to time scales, this is extremely important in evolution, because time is a huge factor in how we get the diversity of life that we have. So again, I understand this being an objection from creationists often. And again, because we don't really understand millions and billions. I don't really understand billions of years. I can sort of make analogies to grasp it, but I can't truly understand a billion of anything. I can barely understand a million of anything, even though that's a number that's still closer to home. So I don't know. It's tough for me. All right, John, I'm going to hand it over to you for a second, because my camera turned off.
One thing I enjoyed was when they did the Red Bull space jump, and Neil deGrasse Tyson had a globe. He was holding a globe in his hand, and he was explaining to people that the varnish on the globe is actually just the distance of what he went up, just to give a reference of how high that particular space jump was. Is that it literally just the varnish of the globe. Right. Just to give people an idea how far, how vast, how big space is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. We don't understand this. We don't understand this. And that's the thing. I mean, I can understand the analogies that people make, like you just did. I can understand, like, when you're looking at the Earth, the crust of the Earth is like this little tiny sliver, and then the mantle is like this giant thing that goes towards the core, and then the core is like this big thing. But the crust, the part that we live on, this little freaking like thin piece of paper wrapped around the sphere of the Earth. Well, oblate spheroid, but it's really hard to imagine that, because when I dig into the Earth with a shovel, it goes damn pretty deep. But deep compared to what? That's the thing. It's deep compared to my size, but my size is extremely tiny compared to the size of the Earth. So that's where, like, we have this sort of, I guess, anthropic bias towards the way we look at certain things. I don't know. But so another argument that we often hear when it comes to creation evolution controversy is this idea of micro versus macro. And you brought this up earlier a little bit. We didn't really get into it, though. So, John, I'm going to let you explain micro versus macro while I take a nice, wholesome, deep breath. So go right ahead. I'm having a little bit of dyspnea.
Okay, wait. So there's the argument of why don't we see wolves turn into dogs or dogs turn into wolves, and why are there still monkeys around, versus observable evolution in particular animals and lizards and snakes or even birds that can be observed in a short period of time, versus the ones that take really, really long versions of time. So that's why when they said that dogs were basically interbred and mixed, and that's why we have the domesticated dog nowadays. So that's macro? No, micro, if I'm not mistaken. Because I don't.
That would be micro. There is no scientific basis for it. I mean, there's no scientific definition that includes micro and macro evolution. It is just made up by creationists. That's exactly what it is. Just so you know, I mean, in case people don't understand this, it is simply made up crap. I actually heard a very old video from Thunderfoot. Like, I don't know if you know who Thunderfoot is. Does all the busted videos and why do people laugh at creationists? His like one of his very first why do people laugh at creationists? He said, this idea that we can evolve different kinds of dogs, but we couldn't possibly get new species or something that's not a dog over a long enough period of time is basically like saying I can walk to the stove to put the teapot on, but to walk to the mall would be impossible. It's that kind of thing. And it's like, given enough time, this is where time comes back into the equation again, evolution can turn anything into anything, but there isn't a goal, just so we're clear. It's not like a dog ever has a goal of turning into a monkey or whatever. It just turns into whatever it turns into. It's just whatever happens to survive and thrive, and whatever is not sufficiently negative so as to harm the species and as a whole tends to survive. So that's kind of how it works. And there's no expectation that in a billion years we're going to get something like a dog turning into a mongoose or whatever. There's nothing in evolution that dictates that. It could be the case that selection pressures just aren't happening. Like with humans, there's really not a whole lot of selection pressure. So there's going to be, if there is change, it's not going to be along the lines of something dramatic that changes our appearance to the point that we start growing wings and shit, where that becomes an advantage. I don't think.
That's where the dog breeder argument comes in. If a dog breeder wants to preserve a particular breed, like if that's the family business, it's been passed from generation to generation, they interbreed a certain kind of species only. But when that family or that business crumbles and those dogs start interbreeding with other dogs, then the pureness of that particular breed is lost. It turns into something else. And if that is the majority of what they have in their property, then that becomes the quote-unquote dominant species. So whatever happened to their property has evolved into something else.
Have you heard the silver fox experiment?
No,
because if you haven't, I'll give you the short version. So basically, there was this group of indigenous people, I don't remember where they were from, and they were trying to create a more passive fox. They had like these silver foxes, and they wanted to make a more passive fox through artificial selection. And what ended up happening is, along the way to making it passive, they bred for passivity. They bred for a lack of aggressive behavior. In that process, strangely enough, they ended up with some really cute, fluffy little furball thing that looked nothing like the original silver foxes and was just super passive. So it almost has like this, the cuteness of the fox wasn't intrinsic to how passive it was. It just happened to be the case that the two were somehow connected in their DNA, I guess. So that the cuter it is, the more passive it seems to also be. I don't want to go into detail about exactly what that means scientifically, because I'm not an expert in evolution, but that's kind of the gist of what went down with the silver foxes. So this also brings us to, back to macro for a second. Microevolution, macroevolution. Microevolution is basically, we can get new breeds of dogs, but they're all, new breeds of dogs, but they're all still dogs. So you can't get something like a frog to a turtle or a frog to a dog or a dog to a cat. Like, that just doesn't happen. That's what they think. And they are monumentally wrong on that fact. But what they'll point to when we talk about things like artificial selection, this is why I try to argue from a different perspective on this. But what'll happen is, when they argue from the perspective of artificial selection demonstrates that you can change genes, like in breeding dogs. Like you can breed dogs for different sizes and, behaviors and things like that, just like the silver foxes or what have you. And they'll say, yes, but they're still all dogs. They're the same kind, and yet is wolf the same kind as a dog? I don't know, because kind doesn't mean anything in science. It's not the term they would use. Yeah, it shares genetic trait. So does everything, by the way. But yeah. So that's just one of those are most of the arguments that I've heard around creation evolution controversy. Not by far, not all of them, but one of my least favorite ones has to be this idea that abiogenesis is just impossible. To me, this is the dumbest argument anybody can make against evolution, because not only is it, first of all, this whole idea of evolution being relevant to atheism is already stupid, but it gets even more stupid because abiogenesis has nothing to do with evolution at all. It's a completely different science. It's absurd for me that these people cannot understand that. Yes, I get that you need life to start before you get change, but once there is life, regardless of how it got there, abiogenesis or some other genesis, that's when you have change, and change happens. It is a fact. It is irrelevant to point to abiogenesis to say abiogenesis can't happen, therefore evolution is false, because those are two different sciences. I'm going to let you jump in on that, but that's kind of where I'm at on this next argument that I hear all the time.
Yeah, I think that's what Richard Dawkins has been arguing for the longest time, because he's a biologist.
Yeah.
And then when he argues evolution and stuff like that, sometimes he gets painted into a that he refuses to do this anymore. He just much rather publish his studies and his books instead. It's a roundabout argument that keeps going on and on and on, because as you mentioned earlier, it's very difficult to see these people basically regurgitate the same argument. It's in one ear out the other.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And so this happened with a creationist I was having a conversation with a few weeks ago, actually. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but it was on Patos again. And he basically went through this, citing some scientist whose name I don't remember because it doesn't matter, who was basically saying, abiogenesis is just impossible. You can't get life without, a god, that kind of thing. I mean, I'm distilling it down really simply. It was a very long talk about, full of logical fallacies and inconsistencies with science. But so basically, he had this idea that you just can't get life started without some divine agency doing it. That was the core of the argument he was making. And I said, so what is your point? As I said to this guy who was arguing this on this guy's behalf, I said, what is your point? And he said, well, clearly evolution is false. And I'm just like, really? You think evolution is false because abiogenesis is false? To me, this is a lot like the Big Bang Theory can't possibly be true. The Big Bang Theory isn't true, so we can't possibly get stars and planets forming. Stellar evolution is impossible. Mm-hmm. And yet we know there are stars and planets. So even if the Big Bang isn't how the universe started, if there's some other mechanism by which the universe started, it doesn't matter, because you still get planets and stars. So it's like that's where we are. Yep. We're at the part where there already is planets and stars. We're at the part where there already is a diversity of life on the planet Earth. We're already there. So how can you possibly say that if abiogenesis is false, you don't get evolution? Sorry, I'm reliving it in my head, and it's just frustrating my brain. Reliving these arguments I have with people.
That's why we're still discovering science, and humanity is trying to figure out. The ultimate question is that, are we alone? And we're still getting there, you know. It's going to
Yeah.
take a while because when you realize how far it is to travel to the moon or travel to Mars or travel outside of our solar system, you know, when you take all those things in, it expresses vastness. You know,
Mhm.
the probability is so high, and at the same time, I forgot who said that he argued that we are a result of the randomness of the universe, that the exact components were all present in our particular planet, and it was able to create life. And that's why, in some degree, I do believe there are aliens, but not like aliens like in movies, you know, nothing like that. It's like
Right.
there will be. There will be life on other planets. They're not going to be carbon based because we exist in a carbon based planet. And the chances of something to be, I don't know, some other compound, some other dominant compound that will breed life of its own that we probably won't be able to comprehend. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean,
I mean,
you know, the
and
randomness
it
doesn't
may be the
exist.
case. It may be the case that carbon-based life is the only kind of life that can exist, but I don't know that that's the case. And I mean,
Yeah.
because I've heard that argument before that maybe it's possible that carbon-based life is the only life that can exist. So any life that does exist anywhere must be carbon-based. But we can't really prove that right
Mhm.
now. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
but at the same time, I think what you're referring to there was kind of the Drake equation, where it's almost a certainty that life exists somewhere in the universe because of the vastness of space. It almost has to exist somewhere else in the universe. But yet we don't hear anything from those other beings because maybe they've already killed themselves. Maybe we just are too far apart to be able to communicate. I don't know what the reason would be, but
Mhm.
I agree with you that aliens almost certainly exist, just not in the sort of Close Encounters of the Third Kind way.
Yeah.
um,
Because that's why, like, even in Mars, you know, like when they say that, oh, they're suddenly discovering water, and water is usually a sign that there's life. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but if they found something further, maybe, you know. But it explains the
I've
randomness of how what certain elements need to exist, with including the radiation of our sun and whatever, all the components that it took to create life, to make life. That's why we have what's the term for Earth-like planets, inhabitable ones? They have a
uh,
term for that.
yeah. Uh, are you talking about like Goldilocks planets or something like that, or?
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Goldilocks. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. This is something I used to think about when I was a kid or teenager kind of thing. I don't know if I ever really thought through it for a while, but let's say that there is a God, the Christian God, and Jesus is the one sacrificial lamb to atone for all humankind, and there are also aliens somewhere else in the universe. What do you think that this says about the religious belief of Jesus Christ's sacrifice? Was it a sacrifice for all life everywhere? Because I understood it to be for mankind, and the fall of mankind is what happened in
Mhm.
Genesis. So I'm wondering, like, do you think God had His own like Jesus event happen on other planets too, or like I don't know? That's so
Exactly. See,
bizarre to me to think about.
it's egocentric. It's very human to be
It
very
is.
egocentric, to think that they are the center of the universe.
It's anthropic principle.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like when in the past people thought that the sun revolved, you know, around the earth, that the earth was the center of all life and everything, which we know
Yeah.
now that it's not true.
Yeah.
That's just
It
humans.
pretty
It's
much can't be
humans
true.
being humans. There's a psychological self-importance that they put on their own, and that's the characteristics of a living entity, something that wants to
Yes.
be its own thing, you know, something that's sentient.
I've heard this from someone else, and maybe you'll know what I'm kind of getting at here. But I remember some scientist somewhere saying something like, if you think about what the center of the universe is, the universe doesn't have an actual center. So everywhere is technically the center of the universe, depending on how you look at it. So maybe we are the center of our own universe. You know, I don't know. It's a little weird to think about. It's like the universe is sort of this loop kind of thing where each end, like if you go far enough in one direction, you'll end up back where you started, kind of thing. I don't know how true that is, but it's an interesting hypothesis. I think that's a pretty accurate summation of what most physicists say about the universe. I could be wrong, but yes, you end up back where you started if you go in a straight line. And so everywhere is the center of the universe, because there isn't an actual center. I don't know. Just something I was thinking about earlier. Okay. Hang on, I'm fiddling with my camera again. All right.
Sounds like something like the multiverse. See, but that's for another conversation.
Oh yeah. No, totally. And I don't want to get off on the rails too far, but that's I always think about random stuff while we're talking about other things. So again, everybody watching, this is a live call-in show. We also take comments directly from the chat. So if you're watching in the chat and you don't want to call in via our Discord, which is right there on the screen, bit.ly/patascall, you can, of course, just leave a comment and we will respond to that as well. So you don't have to actually have a verbal conversation if that's too intimidating for you. If I'm just way too purple and blue for you to handle, I totally understand. So you can't see me, John, but the colors on my screen is just like super contrasted purple and blue colors. Anyway, so all right, what do we want to go on to next? So usually, I think the way I'm going to do the show for anybody watching is that if we don't have any callers or comments from the show, we will probably do an hour to an hour and a half. And if we do have callers and comments, we will extend that out because I don't want to just sit here and ramble. You know, I want to try to have our topic, make it worthwhile, and then move on. So I don't know what you think of that, but it seems like a sensible way to approach it.
Well, one thing I've observed from past episodes is people are actually commenting, it's better if this program was in Tagalog. Nagtatagalog kami.
Yeah.
So if you do have a question in Tagalog, don't worry, I'll translate. And Ben understands a little bit of Tagalog.
Sometimes.
I just don't know how
depends on the day.
How to explain and describe evolution in Tagalog. That would.
You don't know how to what? Oh, you're cutting out, John. Sorry, we lost you a little bit there. You said what now? Yeah, I'm sorry, John. I'm not able to hear you right now. Maybe you can restart your Discord there for a minute. So sorry about that, everybody. Sometimes we just have connection issues. So John will be back in just a moment. So so we've been talking about this for about 45, 50 minutes now, this creation evolution controversy. And while I do want to keep going down the rabbit hole a little bit, I want to talk about some specific groups that are into this. So Answers in Genesis is a really big one. Maybe, John, you've heard of that one. It's like one of the biggest online organizations that kind of goes for that creation spin on things. And
isn't this the one of Ken?
I don't remember. Let me look really quick. Answers in Genesis founder. It might be Ken Ham. Yeah, it's Ken Ham, Mark Loy, and Mike Sobath. So yeah, it's Ken Ham. I thought it was, but then I just didn't want to say it incorrectly. But yes. So Ken Ham, founder of Answers in Genesis, and also the person who created the wonderful Noah's Ark Museum that's just doing so well in Florida. Oh God, that guy is batshit. He has this argument that I hear a lot. Paid for by the government in a large extent too, the building of it. But what I wanted to comment on is one of the arguments he makes a lot, which is, what they want you to ask as a Christian. They want you to ask, you say that life started here and evolved from this and that, but were you there? Were you there, John?
Was I there?
Were you there? How do you know evolution is true? You weren't there to see it happen. How could you possibly know
Yes,
this?
exactly. That's their argument.
What's the response to that argument? What's the best response, do you think? I'm wondering what your feedback is on that one.
It would be that, like what I said earlier, is that I would trust the science and the studies on it, because for hundreds of years, people have been collecting data, and that data has hopefully not been too tarnished, because there are people who try to manipulate data to fit their agendas. But as far as science is concerned, it's been consistent, because we've been using that knowledge to basically develop and evolve and be better. It's using this information. So that's why some people will deny past evidences and say, oh, it's in the past. But the application is being used now. Even when, like in our industry, when it's making alcohol was being made like hundreds of years ago. And it is, something that we base. That's how we have alcohol now.
Right.
It's through these studies and these tests and repeated demonstrations of the quote-unquote facts of how to make alcohol. So we use this also in regards to science. And it always improves itself. That's the one thing that when some people say, oh, science always changes, it keeps, evolving and developing. That's the point. That's what science is. It's studying. It's like, oh, how does this work? Let's find out, and then use it in the future.
Yeah. So I think that was a great response if we're going for a debate format. I'm going for more of like expose the fallacious thinking in the were you there argument. And my typical response to that is, well, you think Jesus died for your sins. Were you there for that? So it's basically just showing them that this idea of were you there is silly, because you can rely on something other than having been there. Like looking at evidence of, like if we have somebody locked up as a murderer, we didn't actually witness them killing anybody. We just followed the evidence. So we weren't there. How do we know he killed someone? Because that's what the evidence shows. So when people ask, were you there when it comes to the Big Bang or when it comes to evolution or what have you, it's just a silly argument that gets nowhere and is completely refuted by you think God created the world with a snap of his finger. Were you there to witness it? No. Well, clearly it couldn't have happened, because that's the logical chain of how you get there. But
it becomes anecdotal and hearsay based on one particular book, or give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe some supporting texts, which were also created by the people who are proliferating the religion itself. So when they ask, were you there? I'll be like, no, I wasn't there, but there are fossils, there are records that we can, use to get to those conclusions, to get to those studies and that data.
Yeah, exactly. So another Ken Ham argument that happens a lot is humans and dinosaurs walked the earth at the same time. That's a very common thing. I don't know how many of what kind of drug you have to be on to accept something like this, to think that the Flintstones is a documentary. But I think that it's quite easy to debunk that. And what happens is they'll say, look, we see dinosaur footprints alongside human footprints, so clearly they existed at the same time. Well, no, that's not how that works. So maybe you should talk to a geologist and have them explain it to you. Because usually what happens is we will see something that looks like dinosaur footprints, perhaps alongside something that looks like human footprints. But when we actually investigate, we find out that it's not actually the case. Or that what we find out is that the dinosaur footprints that are there were already there when the human left their footprints next to them. In other words, they were like fossilized footprints that the human walked alongside, kind of thing. So it's kind of like it would kind of be the same way. Like if we look at a dinosaur being dug up as a fossil, for example, we see dinosaurs being dug up all the time, right? Like their bones and stuff like that. And what if in another 1,000 years or 10,000 years, we have some more archaeologists going through and looking at these dig sites, these places that used to be dig sites that we don't know that they're dig sites anymore, but now we see them and we investigate them. And we see some dinosaur bones right alongside human footprints. Can we then conclude that dinosaurs walked alongside living humans? No. It's you have to do a little bit more digging than surface level analysis like that. And this is the thing I struggle with when it comes to when it comes to discussing these topics with creationists, is that they have such a, and I'm not saying that they're stupid. I'm just saying they have a simplistic way of viewing these topics. Almost childlike, which actually is in line with what the Bible says, that you need to have the mind of a child. But
I think it's just convenient. I wouldn't call it childlike. I think it's just convenient because it's easy to comprehend. It's easy. It's simplification of something. Instead of digging deeper and actually, studying.
Might be an insult to children.
It's just the easy way out.
I feel like I'm being a dick to creationists, but at the same time, I'm talking about a very specific sect of creationism that's like, young Earth creationists, dinosaurs walking alongside people. That kind of batshittery is what we're talking about here. It's almost akin to the flat Earth kind of stuff. And a lot of these people are flat Earthers, by the way.
Park, they have it. They have humans in their museum. They have humans interacting with dinosaurs in biblical times. And I'm sure there are some theists, there are some Christians who will think that is batshit crazy. I want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, because Ken Ham is a very, very specific and special case.
Yeah, he is a very special case. Special is... no, you're here. You're still here. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a comment here from Stephen Jalar Dayan. I hope I said that at least close to right. Hi, folks. Interesting broadcast as always. First off, I'm a mechanistic atheist/humanist, which means to say I'm probably the most atheistic a person can be. So I already have a problem with that because either you believe in a God or you don't. There's no level of not believing. Sorry, I'm already digging into Stephen a little bit here. And I'm on the contention that the linear and/or dualistic view and understanding of the universe and its manifestation in present-day finite math is problematic. What are you talking about? I'm sorry, I didn't. Can you grok what that said? It's okay. The linear and/or dualistic view and understanding of the universe and its manifestation in present-day math, finite, is problematic. I'm not sure I'm following you there, Stephen. Maybe expand on that a little bit more. I'm dropping by to share a YouTube clip I bumped into a few weeks ago, which involves a new discovery regarding and negating Darwin's life's work. I mean, it's worth looking into from a mechanistic perspective, and that I'm inclined to say at this early juncture that the problem lies in viewing evolution linearly or dualistically. Otherwise, if the lens were mechanistic, the present math data would make sense. I need to look into this further because adulting just takes up so much of my time, and this is really important. So, and then he left a Spock symbol with an alien face, and then this symbol. So, thank you, Stephen, for your comment. I'm not sure I'm with you on that, but good luck with that, I guess. I have really nothing to add on Darwin's life's work because I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but I can say that I'm sure Darwin was wrong on a great many things. Darwin didn't have the knowledge of DNA that we have now. He didn't have the knowledge of germs. Germ theory of disease came much later. So regardless of how wrong or monumentally wrong he might have been on some stuff, he was right about the foundation, which is that life changes over time. Evolution is just an observed fact. Natural selection may or may not be exactly how it happened. I don't know that I agree that it's linear. I don't know that anybody is claiming it's linear in the sense that you're describing. We're not talking about ladders here. We're talking about trees. So it's very difficult for me to
that's what
understand what you're getting at.
I don't think it's linear.
Yeah. I don't think it is either, and so I'm not sure where Steven's coming from on that. Sorry, Steven, but if you want to try to comment again and maybe elaborate a little bit, if you're still hanging out, we'd love to hear back from you on that, because I apologize, but I'm just not with you about 90% of what you said, including the most atheistic a person can be, which I think is just a bizarre phrase.
Well,
either you're an atheist or you're not.
That's it. That's all we can do, is that we're going to have to watch it on our own.
Yeah, I definitely will. I definitely will do that. It's called Mathematical Challenges to Darwin's Theory of Evolution by the Hoover Institution. Comments are turned off, of course, because all good scientific institutions don't allow discourse. And sorry. Am I digging into them now? So Hoover Institution is a Stanford University, is a public policy think tank promoting principles of individual, economic, and political freedom. I'm wondering what this has to do with evolution science. I'm looking at it. I'm not seeing a whole lot of information here about them having anything to do with science. Yeah, I don't really know why they would be commenting on this. The Hoover Institution is mostly about Hoover Institution on War, Revolution, and Peace. Political policy or public policy think tank. Has nothing to do with science. They're not a scientific institution. So that's my first argument, probably, is that you're getting information from a non-scientific source. I would stop doing that, just to start with. And not to say that makes it wrong by default. I don't want to paint this in a bad way, because I think that it's possible for it to be right.
If we're atheist property, it's okay to say we don't know. Mm-hmm. We don't know. We're gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify that I'm not making an argument from authority, if it comes from scientists, it's valid. I'm just saying that this case, it's an argument from a bad authority. It's an argument coming from an authority that's not actually an authority on the subject, which in this case is a group that talks about or focuses on public policy and has nothing to do with mathematics or evolution theory or anything else. So while I will probably watch some of the video, I'm going to be very skeptical going through it as actually digging into anything Darwin had to say, because I also don't think it's relevant. This actually brings me to another argument, because I hear this a lot too, and it's like, are you a Darwinist? Have you ever heard that before? You're a Darwinist, John?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. Am I an Einsteinian? It's like, no, it really doesn't, because I don't accept evolution because it came from Darwin. But I think I understand where their mindset is coming from. What it seems to be is this, in my religious views, the beliefs that I hold are by and large true because of the person that said them. Jesus said them, or God said them. The person in this case is very important. And so it's difficult for them to wrap their minds around this idea that it's possible that somebody could believe something purely on the weight of evidence and has no bearing at all on the person who said it. In other words, I don't give a shit about Darwin. Darwin is irrelevant. What he said or what he proposed as a theory is either wrong or not wrong on its own, and has nothing to do with why I accept evolutionary theory. And his model has been changed a lot since he proposed it way back when. Mm-hmm. So it's not even really his theory anymore, per se, because it's been changed and morphed so much now. Now, the basic principles are still his, I'll grant that. But it's not as though science or evolution science belongs to Darwin, as though he's some sort of god disseminating down information about evolution. He was just making observations, writing them down, and describing what he thought was the process. And that doesn't make me a Darwinist.
To where we are
He's
now.
a contributor.
His contribution
he's a contributor.
is undeniable.
Exactly. And
but he's not the one and all that encompasses everything.
I just find it weird that people will say something like, you're a Darwinist in this kind of context, because it's like, if I accept, the theory of gravity or relativity, that doesn't make me an Einsteinian. It's like, this is just, I don't know. I have a hard time with it. I mean, I guess if you want to say that if a person accepts the theory of relativity, that makes them an Einsteinian. Okay, fine. I'm an Einsteinian. I buy that definition. I just think it's a silly thing to do, and it's attempting to make the atheists look like they're worshiping Darwin. It's true because Darwin said it. Darwin said it, so it's true. And that's just not how it works. It's not accurate at all about how we think.
That's what happened to our God, Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
The atheist God, the Messiah.
Gosh,
the four horsemen.
I have this picture right behind my monitor right here, and I pray to it 3 times a day while facing Mecca.
Right.
Sorry.
You know what this reminds me of? I wasn't really called a Darwinist more than I was called a Scientologist. Because I believe in science, therefore I'm a Scientologist. That's weird. Those are the types of labels. Because people want to label someone who contradicts with them, because then they have an opposition. Then they have someone to argue against. Then they have an institution or a side. That's why a lot of Christians, a lot of Catholics can't figure out why atheists are us more often than not. We're solo. We don't go in packs. We're lone wolf packs. We don't have a church. We don't have a Bible. We're not that kind. But to rationalize why atheists disagree with atheists is that they'll find a label and say, "Oh, you're a Darwinist. Oh, you're you're a Scientologist because you believe in science." Those are the times that I find the conversations hilarious, and I can kind of sympathize and understand that the person I'm discussing with is probably not going to listen to me, has probably already set their minds on who I am and what I am. Yeah. It's just strange, man. It's labeling. It's tribalism.
It is, and it also leads down another rabbit hole that these people like to go down, and some of them, not all of them, do this, but a good handful of them have, to me, which they'll say, well, if you accept evolution, you're a Darwinist, and then they will take that and go, if you're a Darwinist, you must be in favor of eugenics and social Darwinism, which is just a complete bullshit slippery slope fallacy that basically likes to say that, well, if you accept evolution, essentially it's drawing a line between I accept the science of evolution to I think we should go around killing people who are weak and holding the species back. That's really what they're getting at. Survival of the fittest, that we need to basically do what Hitler did and weed out the weaker species or weaker of the species kind of thing. That has happened to me so many times in conversations I cannot count over the years that I've been accused of that just by saying I accept evolution. They will lead you down the path of so therefore you believe that it's right to just gas people and kill them because they're not fit to survive. And I can't begin to explain just how stupid that is and offensive. It's really offensive to me. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's offensive to everyone, but it's offensive to me. And I think the main issue with it is that it's a slippery slope fallacy. It's saying that if you think this, then you have to go all the way down the path. And no, I don't have to go all the way down that path, because that path leads to nothing useful, nothing productive. It just leads to unnecessary death and murder. And I'm against that as a humanist. I don't know about you, John. I don't know. Are you against murder? As a rule?
Oh, yeah. Well, of course. No, but that's why. It's all about these labels. I think 2 weeks ago we were talking about how people can be labeled communists. And this is the same thing with atheists.
Yeah.
We're normally or usually labeled Satanist or demonyo kayo. Just because we don't agree with your subscribed religious belief doesn't mean we're demons. Doesn't mean we're demonyo, satanas. We're not like that. It's just I think it brings people comfort that they're able to label something, to be able to understand it, because that's why it's oversimplification.
Well, yeah, and
So yeah,
that's the
I'm
thing.
not a Darwinist. I'll say it now. I'm not a Darwinist.
No, go ahead.
That's for sure.
So that's the thing with this is that this slippery slope of going down to social Darwinism from I accept evolution to social Darwinism. What's wrong with it is that it's basically saying that if you accept the fact that, let's say, the black widow spider eats its mates, right? Whenever the male spider has sex with the female black widow, she kills the male and eats it. And you're saying, I accept that as a fact. That's what happens, right? That's what we know what happens. Mm-hmm. And then someone comes along and says, oh, so you're in favor of women killing you after you have sex with them. That's the equivalent of that sort of line of thinking, that they're basically saying that if you accept a fact about reality, you must also accept that fact should be imposed on our society. And that's just bizarrely stupid to me. And I've used that word a lot today, but there's a lot of stupidity in this controversy. I'm sorry to say. As some of it, like I said, like the one argument that I did point out was something I kind of agreed with, or not agreed with, but I thought was at least more compelling, which was the time argument. But even that fails. But I don't find it nearly as stupid as these ones that want to go down the path of you're a social Darwinist. I don't. I'm sorry, John. I'm getting worked up. I don't mean to. I need a picture of a kitty or something.
But I like the fact that Stephen says that he's finding the broadcast interesting. So thanks, man. It's good, and maybe we can touch on the video. Maybe do a reaction next week.
Yeah, that would be. I think a good idea. I think we could do. I think we could watch the video. Probably, like maybe I can distill it down to some parts by next week. And see if maybe I can have a version of it that we can walk through piece by piece and then kind of comment on it. Yeah, we could try that, and we'll see how that works. I'll have to work on the tech setup for that a little bit, but I think it's doable. Gosh, so we're running up on just a few more minutes left because we're not getting a whole lot of callers or anything like that. So I kind of want to start wrapping it up here. If there are any comments, please leave them now because we're going to be turning off the stream here in a little bit. We're going to be wrapping up our thoughts on a lot of what we said here because I feel like at some point John and I are going to start rambling and I'm almost out of topic. Even though there's a lot more I could say on each individual topic, I just wanted to give kind of a broad brush on creation evolution controversy today. And maybe next time we can, or maybe at some point in the future, we can go into a little bit deeper on some of these things. Maybe see what the audience likes to talk about or what have you. But I think...
Yeah, because this program isn't a debate program. It's more of a discussion. And I'm sure that we have some new atheists or, newly converted audience members. So we just want you to know na huwag kayong mahiya. You can ask questions. We're not here to embarrass even the theists. We're here to discuss and learn. It's basically an educational program. This is Sesame Street without the puppets. It's a lot of booze.
I love it. So yeah, we are also on YouTube, by the way, and this does also stream live to YouTube every week. So if you don't want to comment with your real name like you do on Facebook, you can always hop over to YouTube and use your pseudonym to comment there. And while we may not see it live, we will, of course, respond to those comments because we only watch the live stream from Facebook because I can only watch so much at once. Sorry about that. I can only keep track of so many different things. So I'm doing my best to do that. But so we have, I don't think anybody's really watching the YouTube yet anyway, so I'm not too worried about missing any comments over there. But yeah, this has been episode 10. Can you believe it's been 10 episodes already? It doesn't feel like that many.
No, it's crazy. It's crazy, man.
Before you know it, we'll be at 100. So 10 episodes of Podcast Weekly. Today was creation, evolution, controversy, sort of a baby step into the concepts. And then I think John and I will go to the background and talk with some of the guys in the back and, the guys over in the back there, get the good beer. We'll see what they can do about helping us come up with a topic that we can discuss next week, and maybe also getting into these topics a little bit deeper. So thank you all so much for watching, and don't forget, you can, of course, go to patreon.com/Patas Inc. to provide a donation to the organization. You can go to patasinc.org also if you want to read on our blog, anything like that. John, is there anything else you'd like to say before we close it out?
I think we're all good. This is our first Thursday, so yeah. I think we should give people a chance to like get used to the format now that we're going to be doing this every Thursday, no longer in the weekends.
Yeah. I'll try to schedule it a little bit more ahead next time. I just neglected to do that this week, so I'll make sure we get people in here at least a day in advance, getting reminded of it. So yeah, but thank you again so much, John, for being here. I actually enjoyed today's discussion quite a bit. I like this kind of talk, creation, evolution stuff. That's my field. I mean, I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but that's my field in terms of interest, because I've always been interested in science. So it is something that I have a lot to say on. Yeah, okay, that grammatically works. So all right, but thank you so much again, and we will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.